So I'm Peter Daring with Peak Design. We make camera accessories. We started with one flagship product, kind of a new invention, and lately we've just been sort of improving on some other accessories and ideas within the photography space.
And what led you to the photography space?
Well, I've been interested in photography ever since high school, and I did one really big trip in particular in 2008. I did 4 months on the road in Southeast Asia, in India and New Zealand, and I had a big camera with me all the time. And the other thing I had with me was a backpack. And it was the camera was great. I wanted it with me all the time, but it was a total pain. And I thought, why can't I just anchor it into my backpack strap? I've got this great sturdy harness. How come I can't do that? So that's kind of what got me into photography and also got me into the invention. I sat on the idea for 2 years. I went back to work as a construction engineer, and where I was, content, but I always knew I wanted to try and do something on my own. And for me, 2 years went by, and I really had the same problem again. I was doing some backcountry skiing, and I wanted my camera out, and I literally couldn't have it out because I had poles. And I was pretty intent on kind of quitting my job and moving forward with something else anyways. So it just seemed like, man, if I've got this problem, I think everyone who owns a camera, at least at some point, has this problem. And it simply hadn't been done yet by anyone else. So it just seemed like a combination of things made it really ripe for the picking.
When you started this venture, what did you think it meant to be a maker or an entrepreneur, and how has that vision changed over time?
So words like maker, entrepreneur, and startup, this probably sounds really naive or something, but I did not know that that's what I was doing. I just had an idea and I wanted to pursue it. I guess if someone would have said, you're an entrepreneur, I guess I would have thought about it for a second, probably said, I suppose. But at the time, it just felt like I was just out there by myself doing stuff. And I didn't identify with this culture that I'm now completely surrounded with, and now I'm kind of well versed in it, but I wasn't even aware of it to begin with.
What have been some of the challenges you've faced along the way through this process?
Let's see here. Not knowing anything about manufacturing processes, not knowing manufacturers, not having the computer skills to do the actual three-dimensional design work that's required. I had to learn a lot of that. Not knowing how products are brought to market. I had no idea about that before I got into it. All of those challenges, I feel like I could help other people get by very quickly now. The biggest one, aside from all the design stuff, which is really complicated, and all the manufacturing stuff, even more so, the most complicated thing is how do you get people to know about your product or care about your product? And that question has been answered by Kickstarter and the likes. I really am a firm believer in the fact that this is the revolution which is allowing a lot of people to push for their ideas and do things by themselves. It made it to the #2 most funded project of all time at that present juncture, and it was absolutely everything. It was my PR, it was my it provided a base of feedback and information, and one that is coming from this benevolent area, as opposed to like a faceless product that gets put out there by, let's say, Chrysler, where people are kind of wanting to take jabs at it. In the Kickstarter world, people are like, hey man, I want to be your friend first, and I want to help you along second, and here's my feedback. So it was really an excellent way of communicating with this base. So much goodwill came out of it that by the time that Kickstarter was done, with $365,000 in hand and 6,000 customers who were really, really happy, and it felt like they were, a part of the project, the company was up and running, right, like that. I was 100% confident that my idea was going to be viable to begin with.
And what gave you that confidence?
because it was just my own experience. It was a problem that, it literally solved a problem that I knew a lot of people had, and it solved it in a way that was completely different, and it solved it in a way that was factually useful. Like there's no, you can't even say that it's not useful. It might not be what someone wants to do. There's a personal preference involved there, but it truly is a useful product. So I felt really, really confident that other people would see it that way too. When it came down to the manufacture of the product, I knew from looking at, I used tripods and tripod heads as my main influencer of my design, and I knew that most of the tripod heads out there were die-cast aluminum and then post-machined. And so I Googled Bay Area die casting and emailed 3 people, and one of them emailed me back, and I got a meeting over in Alameda with a company called SKS Die Casting. They've been in business die casting since World War II. And Jerry Keating, the owner of it, has been around since World War II doing this stuff. He's 89 years old, and he's still an active member of the company. Anyway, I found die casting. I found a local die caster, and I sat down and talked to him. Obviously, my design at that point was still done in Google SketchUp. So, but they liked the idea, and I think that they liked me, and I was selling myself to them, because no company is going to want to spend time on a project that they don't think is going to have some reward down the end. And this is manufacturing. They expect to make hundreds of thousands of parts, not 100. And so I had to sell them on the idea just to give me the opportunity to go into business with them. And then there was a lot of engineering work that needed to be done. So basically, we made an agreement which said, they'll do the engineering work for me, and you got to pay for it up front. But if you go forth and you buy some tooling with us, which is about a $20,000 investment, we'll back out those engineering costs. And so I scraped the money together and said, let's go for it. And we did. And it was a phenomenal process, because this is when I started learning about manufacturing. Now, when I got the quotes back, they gave me 2 quotes. They said, Peter, we can do it right here in Alameda, and this is where it'll all happen. You see the shop, you see everything, or we can do it with our shop in China. And I said, well, give me both the quotes, and they came back and they quoted it. And the price to do it in America was 6 times the cost to do it in China. And I knew what I wanted the product to retail at, and in America, it would have cost more to make it than to retail it. Forget all the other costs associated. So I didn't really have a choice. And so I said, well, let's go to China. And there began my relationship with making parts in China and having them shipped to the United States and assembling them here. I had some really interesting experiences. All of a sudden I'm now emailing directly with these either actual factories in China or just trading companies who kind of liaise with factories in China. And that's kind of a trip, because you've got this kind of relatively poor level of communication, because their English isn't perfect. And as someone who doesn't know anything about making parts in China, my ability to speak their language of manufacturing was really, really green as well. But they were really accommodating, very kind. I did take some leaps of faith. I trusted them. I sent them money, and sure enough, they sent me back parts. And I started just developing more and more trust over time. Eventually, I kind of realized that by working with the American company, which I was very comfortable to do and very happy to do, because they did all the communication with China, and I just had to talk with them. But by doing that, I was basically paying double the price that I would pay by working directly with China, or if you're fortunate enough to find manufacturers in other countries who are capable in those other countries. But when you're ready to take a leap, find a country overseas that can do it, and it will I hate to sit here now and just kind of outwardly give that advice. Everyone would like to make things in America. Everyone would like to keep as much of the economy of one of these products here within our own borders. But from my experience, I have found that if I want to make a product that I can sell at a profit and not have it be like a niche product, say that you're buying this because it's made in the US, but rather just because of the utility of the product, I only see that as viable at this current time as doing overseas. And that's from my experience. I'd love to be more proven wrong than I am. But
why would that be important to you?
Because I worry about what 315 million people in this country are going to do for jobs. But there are some realities that I can't really control there.
Along your story today, you've shared a lot of specific people who have supported you or partnered with you along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Have you been able to develop those personal relationships with your manufacturers in China? And if not, does that impede your business in any way?
It's a good question. I do feel like I've had personal relationships with all of them. I've been to China and I've met them, and I found that extremely rewarding. Occasionally, I've found it's also very revealing in a lot of ways. Then again, in some ways, it's not. China is still a mystery. I have relationships where actually at the moment, I don't quite know to what level I can trust the relationships that I have. I have a ton invested in these things, but it's not like I have a perfectly clear understanding of what their business setup is. I don't know who owns their companies. I don't know who's making the money. It's just there is a bit of a veil there that, try as I might, I simply cannot understand. So I actually kind of try to substitute some of the fact that I don't know how their companies are set up with personal information, almost like sharing my story, my life, my daughter, like sending them pictures and things like that. And I do make an attempt to humanize the situation. Doesn't mean that it's all effective, because in the end, I think particularly, again from my experience, China's a place that is extremely business oriented. They are a very opportunistic culture, as is proven by the fact that they are just crushing it right now. And so I do develop personal relationships, but I will never rest on them, if that makes sense.
And my final question for you is, how do you define success for yourself?
Not losing money is, and that's very different than making money, I suppose. Success is, I have a business which supports a relatively modest lifestyle that I have. I have employees that get to lead a similar lifestyle because of this business. And I have, I think, also great opportunity for growth. One measure is that I always feel at liberty to take on any new project that I want to at this point. I'm perhaps fortunate in that I have some pretty modest goals for the things that we want to take on when it comes to products. I don't want to build cameras. I want to build camera accessories. So in the whole world of camera accessories, as we create them, feels very much within reach. So that to me definitely feels like success.